Hello, welcome back to this wrap-up discussion episode for Shrouded Stories, Beyond the Great Wall, Season 1, How Everything Came to Be. My name is Andrew.
My name is Shuhui.
And my name is Josué.
And we are the ones responsible for this. Somehow this happened. But now that it
Yeah.
has happened, we're so excited to discuss it a little bit with you. Especially now that, guys, Season 1 is behind us. It feels so strange. Feels so tingly and strange. How are we holding up?
Oh, I mean, it's great. I'm honestly so glad to have this completely out there and like to have people like be able to see it, hear it, whatever they want. And now I'm kind of glad to be wrapping up. It's nice to just have a nice little bow at the end, and then figure out what comes next.
Workload wise, hooray! Finally done. But I'm already planning for next season and upcoming stories. So yeah, pretty excited still.
Yes, me too. I feel similarly with the excitement and the feeling of thank God. But speaking of, as Josue said, putting a bow on all of this, since we finished our first season, as you can imagine, we've had some extra questions come in, because not everything about these stories is perfectly intuitive, we'll say. They're gloriously weird, and like everything gloriously weird, it merits a little further discussion. So we've decided to take this chance to gather together some of the questions we've gotten from viewers over the past few weeks, and do just a final sort of session of office hours for us to just talk about this while we have a chance. Again, I'll say something that I'm sure we're going to repeat a little bit as we go on. We're not experts. We're just well-meaning. How to say it? Well, we're definitely well-meaning.
That's it.
Enthusiasts. Yeah.
I like that.
But
And I do have to say, like, it does feel like it does feel a little bit weird not being in the same room as y'all. But it's kind of nice to be back and talking about all of the stuff that we've been doing. So
here. Yeah. Yes, as you can tell, we are faithful viewers. We are not in the same room as we were for the rest of our discussion episodes due to the roaring winds of time and change. But we're so glad we had the opportunity to do this right now. So without further ado, we're going to just launch into some of these questions that
All
we've
right.
accumulated. Okay, so starting basic. Concerning the origin of these origin stories, who wrote these and why? Or if we can put it a little differently, if say more than one single author is responsible, as is often the case with myths and legends, then how did these stories evolve? Was this the product of oral traditions? Were written sources kind of passed down and changed over the years? How did we get here? In short.
It's definitely more than one authors. There are like a lot of books describing the same story, different versions of the same story, and like some of the books I reference could be from like several dynasties. Um, it started off like oral tradition, but not exactly like Western mythology. Chinese mythology is more like I like to call it fantasized history. So it's really closely related to our politics dynamic at the time as well. So you will see, like in this one and in later seasons, there are mythologies that talked once, or a character talked once and disappeared in the whole like realm of mythology. And there are deities that you see that prospers throughout the history. That's probably because like people who believe in him just lived longer.
They were doing
I
something
think.
right then. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't exactly know the purpose of those mythology, but one is to like preserve some kind of like mental power to people, and at the same time like record some of the history partially.
Mm. Can I follow? This is not a viewer question. This is just me selfishly asking a
Right,
follow
go
up.
ahead.
I mean, I don't know anything about like the historicity of, say, the Arthur legends or anything like that. But was that sort of a Western version of the kind of thing you're talking about? Like taking something that might potentially have a seed in history, then it just kind of explodes into this kind of fantasia storytelling thing over centuries.
Um, it. I don't know if you remember like episode 4 when we were describing the fight between fire and water. It like a lot of historians actually believe it's two tribe fighting with each other instead of just like mythology. And I kind of believe it that too, because later in the mythology, I know we didn't cover in first season stories, but in later seasons we'll probably talk about them. And there are a lot of fightings and a lot of culture mergers and a lot of like timeline of giving birth to somebody and then they got into fight and such and such. I Sorry, I lost your question. Oh my god, what was your
No, it's
question
fine.
again?
No, it's fine. I was just asking about sort of how interesting the original question. We should go back to actual viewer question was
But
who wrote these and why. And it sounds like go on this way.
I just want to say like it feels like at least for me personally, I feel like the distinction between mythology and like a legend, in a way, because like how I view it, like legends tend to be based on truth, but glorified or altered in some way. And then I guess that can also like keep going and following through, like falls into mythology and starts to be glorified. But it is interesting to see that specific detail because I'm no expert, but I do feel like other mythologies also follow that same train of thought to some extent. Like, oh, this natural event happened, we have to explain it. What I'm curious about is the whole political aspect, because like, sure, the Trojan War may have some basis. I have know nothing about this, but may have some. Foundation in truth and in reality and something that happened. So I guess I'm just like drawing parallels between this.
Um, I mean, I was just listening to I think it was Bart Ehrman recently talking about the past being the history as an investigation of the past being a discipline so unlike other sciences or arts or humanities or what have you, because the past is an experiment that can't be recreated. All we can do is sort of interpret and follow breadcrumbs and try and reconstruct based on probability. And it makes myth and legend, such as comes down to us like this, so much more mysterious and fascinating because it's always tempting to say, "Ooh, what could that kernel of truth be?" But it just kind of makes us as frustrated as we are intrigued.
It's quite interesting, like in the earlier stages of like mythology and deity creations, you see more of them related to natural power. And then as you progress in the history, the thing that they're protecting or like representing get a lot more concrete. So I don't want to foreshadow anything, but like it's really funny that we have like gods of doors and stuff like that later on. But like in the beginning, you mostly just see fire, water, like sun, moon, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
So it becomes more
We shan't
complex.
force you to give spoilers. Mm. Yes. And actually, this is quite a neat segue to another question that we have
Ready?
from a viewer. So I'm glad you brought this up. So talking about sort of the creation of myths and their explanatory purposes. You were just mentioning a moment ago, Shuhui, about how episode 4 is hypothesized to have some sort of a root in actual warring tribes. I mean, it does give us a bit of uh, question about how these things are formed as a response to the world around the original storytellers. So to get back to the original question this guy sent in, a lot of myths are told for explanatory purposes, like story of Hades and Persephone explaining the changing of seasons. Um, do some of these stories qualify as explanatory? Besides the obvious explanatory value of a creation myth in episode one, things like the episode four, the fire and water battle, would that be representative of a natural disaster of some kind? I mean, of course, with that example you just told us, it's something else. But is myth as explanation a big uh, factor in the way these things came to be?
I think so, because people were trying to understand the world as they live. And there are just so many things that they couldn't explain, like why the sun rise every day in the morning and then set later, and then the moon, and then like what was that? Like even with the last episode, the after effects of the disaster, the land is tilted, so the sea and water goes one way, and the sun and the moon and the stars, they're rotating, kind of. So it does have the like explanatory purpose in it. And like in the third episode where Fushi was trying to draw Sabagua, I think that's like a huge explanatory like idea behind how we should run our lives and how we're dealing with disasters and things that we can't control.
And also,
Oh,
I do
I
want
go
to,
on. Sorry.
sorry, I do want to add to this. I don't feel like there has to be like the one explanation for a story. Like especially going back to like episode four, like with the Gonggon and Zhurong. It could be two tribes fighting. It could be a flood incident. It could be that one of the tribes flooded and the other one burned. Like there's like a lot of, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, I feel, especially when we're talking about stuff that gets more
Yeah,
like
like
that delves into legend and then gets mythologized. I think there can be like a lot of overlaps, like a lot of similar stories maybe that just became this monolith in a way.
we were kind of like uh backwards deducting how the things happen based on a resulting effect. So if a mountain collapsed and there's disaster after, we don't really know how it happened. So like how those mythology goes largely depend on people's imagination, trying to explain something, whether it's true or not. But the intention is there.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Bagua episode and how just that's sort of like the big why is everything episode. And even with some of the more wild elements of that story, where at the end the Bagua is used as sort of this um, equation slash talisman for the people in the story world to understand and predict the weather. I mean, we read that and we think, oh, very silly. But wait, we I mean, we do predict the weather these days. It's this very fun sort of bizarre way in which we kind of catch up to these myths in the way our wild world is at the moment. Um, yeah. Let me see. Anything further on myths as explanatory value, or shall we give a kick to the next question?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, moving on. Okay, with that, let's move on to surely a much more gentle and a topic that's never going to ruffle any feathers whatsoever:
Oh
the
no.
relationship between myth and religion. Yay!
Woo.
Here's a question that we received. In Western countries, we're used to creation myths being integral parts of religion, like Judaism, Christianity, or the ancient Greek Parthenon. Are these stories spiritually or religiously important to Chinese culture, or are their legacies more literary than spiritual, as in more Epic of Gilgamesh like than Bible like?
Hmm. All right.
It's a mouthful. Yeah.
It's a really huge question to answer, because answer is not simply just yes or no, because of course they're culture related, and of course they're gonna affect our spiritual beliefs, because n- not saying the ones that appeared in what we've seen in the first season, um but deities do come back into different religion. Like the three biggest religions we have in China is Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucius. That's the right word, right? Yeah. And uh, funny that I know myself for that, but they kind of all have their own structure for deities, and the mythology kind of goes three ways, but they at the same time have like entangled storylines. It's hard to see that when you only have the season 2 5 stories, because a lot of them are like really early in the history, and not a lot of them actually come back in later. Um, but I don't want to say the answer is no, because some of them actually have impactful figure kind of meaning later in other religion, but definitely not as important as what would be just like seeing in Bible.
That's so much. When you say under these three traditions, there's some entanglement of these stories and these deities, it does kind of bring up images of crossover episodes. If that's not too off the mark. I mean, only to say that not. I'm not joking.
Sorry, I love the
I mean,
comparison.
again, great. But no, just because, I mean, again, as a non-theologian or historian myself, I'm vaguely aware that, I mean, because we're so used to, at least in, Western countries, the sort of the monotheistic framework, where not only do you just believe in the one God, but that necessitates disbelieving all other gods. While, to the best of my knowledge, early polytheistic beliefs were more like, oh well, I worship this god and you worship that god, and oh, if your crops do better, maybe I'll start worshiping your god instead. It's a bit
Exactly.
more of a crowded marketplace. Does that sound a little familiar?
Yeah, very actually. That's how religion work in China, basically. Because you will see people actually like worshiping all three of them at the same time, and whoever it works, they will worship them a little bit longer.
Cover your
Um,
bases.
yeah, or different religion have different purpose. Like you, if you want like marriage, you probably won't go to Buddhism. Um, Things like that. Um, like I know probably people are pretty familiar with Sun Wukong, like the Monkey King in Chinese mythology. The book Journey to the West describing him actually have him involved in all three religion, because when he was born, right after he learned a lot of his skills during Taoism, and then when he was on the journey to the West, he was mostly like interacting with Confucius and Taoism. And then at the end, he became a Buddha. So it's pretty interesting to see how later on they kind of like intertwine with each other and becoming like a very unique belief system in Chinese people.
But like, so let me get this straight. Because like, what's interesting about this is that no matter what branch you are, or like what kind of melding of religion, what we've talked about still serves as a setting, as a backdrop, as somewhat influencing current thoughts. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yes, that is very correct.
Then adding on to that, they are not in themselves, or at least like, well, of course we're generalizing a little bit here, but they are not in themselves like religions of their own, or like people that still worship Pangu or Niwa in the same way that we describe them in this season.
Mm, I I don't want to say no, because there are like minority groups. Actually, they still have the worshiping ceremonies
Gotcha.
from time to time, worshiping like specific deities,
Okay.
but they're not majority of us.
Okay. Gotcha.
Ugh, if only these history and religion matters were more clear cut.
Yeah.
I
Really
know. There we
easy
go.
to.
Oh, God, what are we doing? We are aware, dear viewers, that it's hugely in over our heads, but that's the fun, isn't it? Anyway, or at least me most of all, and certainly Josue a little bit less, and Shuhui even less than that, but I'll happily know the least forever. Anyway, that's fascinating. Next question. To drill down a little more specifically, one person had a question about the reparation episode. Okay, here it is. Given all the possible things Nua could use to repair the sky, clay, wood, spider webs, her own hair, why colorful stones? What's the symbolism here? I mean, it's phrased in a way that points out the inherent weirdness of choosing anything to repair the sky. And what's the what? Why do we land on rocks? It feels like if it's almost like an antithetical thing. Like I know what we'll use to repair the sky, a totally different element. We'll use the we'll use the rocks.
Not just rocks, it's like colorful rocks.
Excuse me. I'm so sorry. That makes it make so much more sense. Yeah.
Actually, I feel like it's trying to say that finding those rocks are like a harder job than it looks. Otherwise, like everybody can put the rocks together and do a hot pot, and the sky is extra layers or something like that. But no, it's actually so rocks are pretty common in our world. But finding all of them around the world, different colors, and putting them in a pot and melt them, that is somehow turning normal things into something sounding impossible. And that's like trying to say, oh, she has great ability and she has this passion for humans. She wants to save us. And this is what she did. Like, even though we have the same material, maybe, but we couldn't do the same.
I've got a weird thought. The sky,
Okay. Go
the
ahead.
sky. From what I remember, the sky was like yang energy, and then the earth was yin energy. And then I can't help but notice the fact that we're using yin into yang to repair that, kind of like the bagua and all that, like the
Ooh,
presence.
you're into something.
I don't know, like the presence of this something other
Ah,
in
ah.
I don't know. It's just a thought. Yeah.
It's like a balancing. Also, I don't know if this is true, but like we also have the concept of five different elements. So fire, water, uh, wood, metal, and earth. So that's representing five different colors, and the stone that she actually used was called the five color stones.
Oh.
So that could be gathering all of the element needed, and phew.
Oh, that's lovely. I mean, listen, truly, I've never thought about this before now, just how much importance we as human beings have throughout all of our history, how much importance we've put on rocks. Like it's I mean not just in terms of, tool crafting and so forth, but how many different cultures have some rock of special importance, whether it's a special spiritual connection to wait, I think I might have to take all of that back because I can't actually name an example of rocks that are important to people, but it feels intuitively like it must be
Sisyphus.
so. Like people must like see
I can.
Sisyphus. Well, aside from Sisyphus, that's not what I meant. Was not so much like a boulder, but there must have been ancient peoples who were digging a hole and they happened to uncover like a giant like mass of quartz, and that somehow must mean something more to them than just any old just slab of sand. What do you call it? Sedimentary rock or whatever.
I don't know. I feel like
Well, Monkey King was born from a stone.
what?
Uh,
Sorry, not the topic. We'll get to that story at
oh,
What?
some
I just
point.
said. Sorry.
um,
We will. Yeah.
And actually, we have other like literature about the rock that Nuwa like used or left over. There are like a lot of stories that came from that. But that's very very late in the history. We
Oh,
probably won't cover it until later.
ooh, then I don't want to. Then, as a preview of something that might or might not happen, can I ask? Do you mean that there's sort of like a MacGuffin quest in the world now that these rocks are still out there, and
There are leftovers of them.
got it, got it. That's fun. That's very fun. Ugh, love rocks. Okay, next question. No, sorry. Unless we have a further rock analysis, not only am I not a theologian, not a historian, I'm also not a geologist. So there's really nothing I can add to this discussion. I'm so sorry. Uh,
You're good.
okay, sorry. On to the next question. Okay. So someone is asking, was there any extra significance to Mount Kulun, which, as we know, having watched these episodes and having made these episodes, is where Fushi and Nua went to ask permission for their weird incestuous union. We'll open this to the floor. If we happen to know, was this because the space was sacred in some way previously established? Was it just because you're trying to get closer to the sky? Why this particular mountain?
So we have a lot of ladders to heaven. Like this is one of the famous one actually. Um, yeah, it could be trees, it could be mountains, but there are places that have those kind of magical ladders that we climb on top of that, and we'll be seeing the above world.
Mm.
Huh.
So any specific reason why is that one, I'm not sure, but it is important and it does have its significance even in later stories.
Mm.
There are, sorry.
May I follow up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. No, you're good. Quick follow up then. I'm picturing Jack's beanstalk.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's that literal.
Yeah.
I love it because it was the sort of thing where I couldn't quite tell if we meant this as sort of a metaphorical portal to heaven, or we were just talking really basic ancient cosmology of up in the sky is a different world.
Yes.
Cool.
Yep.
That's very cool.
The world
I
that
like
was cracked and out of it poured stuff out and then mended. Now we can just reach it through ladders. Yeah.
You make it sound weird, Josué.
It sounds weird.
Why did you do that?
It sounds weird. I'm still like wrapping in
Oh
my
my
head
God.
around the
So
cosmology.
It's okay.
That's kind of like leaving hope to human if you want to become deity. If you overcome certain difficulties, it is possible.
There are human deities at some point.
Love
There are
it.
a lot of human that become deity after
Oh.
events.
Oh, spoiler world for ancient myths. We'd better back off. Okay, great. Well, the mountain question settled fairly easily. It feels like it's one of the few things we've gotten to where there's actually a kind of clear-cut answer in some way, or at least we don't have to chase our tails about it for too much. All right, good. Well done, us, for answering that question. Let's move on to our next little bit. We're shortly about to move on to behind-the-scenes questions, by the way. But anyway, here's our last story-related question. Okay. Aside from religious and cultural stuff, what sort of impact have these stories had? I guess you could take that in a number of ways.
What one could be like I don't know if you guys know, but we have a lot of like full words idioms. Um Even though they're only full words, but sometimes like they have a whole story behind it. So we're only using those forward as like a referencing to that story and the meaning behind that story. So for example, we have 开天辟地, which is like the story of Pangu. That nowadays means that somebody is establishing like a new unknown world from scratch. So
Mm.
if somebody like invented very very new technology that nobody has seen before, he could be the new Pangu. So I don't know if
Gotcha.
that counts as impact, but that is something that we actually have and still use in nowadays.
Okay.
Oh, I love that. I mean, we should have asked about this earlier because there are definitely we can think of sort of at least English language equivalents of that sort of thing, like calling someone an Icarus or like referencing a sort of Damocles, or even just phrases that have survived from works of ancient. I was about to reference Dante. It's not quite ancient, but things
It is for
like
English.
we all know
Hmm.
abandon hope ye who enter here, but it's yeah, just kind of yeah. Excuse me, not in it. Yeah, forgive me.
Achilles heel.
Just
I feel like that's
yeah,
probably one that a lot of people are familiar with.
yeah. I love those. They're just fun. They're just like little gold nuggets in the language. They're just with huge stories behind them. And it's we should have figured out that it's not exclusive to the storytelling of just the.
That's also
Sorry, I'm
like
trying to. Yeah, go on.
makes learning of Chinese language pretty hard because we have ton of them, and instead of just learning them, you have to actually know the stories behind them. But it's pretty fun.
Since you brought that up about language, Shuhui, Josue, I know you've been on your own sort of language journey, trying to learn from Shuhui. I mean, does this strike you as familiar? These since you've been in the trenches with this. Is this familiar? The having to learn an epic for particular words and idioms.
Well, I feel like that's just the thing that happens with every language. Chinese has been very specific in the sense that, well, yeah, it's a whole new concept for me, especially since I come from Romance languages. So yeah, it is the four words that I had to learn. I had to learn a little bit about it, and that's actually like a little bit of why I got very interested in starting this podcast and like just putting this out there. But also like when I've learned other languages, even when I was learning English, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make quite sense. That you have to like be a little bit more involved in the culture to be able to understand what it implies. So I think that's just a natural process of just like learning a language is learning the culture to some extent. Um, yeah.
Oh, you're very wise, Josue. How dare
Stop.
you be so wise? All right. Well, that was the last of our story questions for the season. Um, Hooray for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you all for submitting. And we are going to end with just a few little behind the scenes questions that have been sprinkled in, like an ever so delicate drizzle of. Let's ask the questions. We have. Okay. We already kind of answered this just now a little bit with Josue, but we'll reiterate. Okay. How did this start? And who started it? Whose fault is all of this, in other words?
Josue, you want to start?
Oh God. Okay. Um. So I like languages. I like learning, and I like cultures. So I wanted to like make the best out of the new friendships I was forming. I was like, "Hey, Shuhui, I want to learn Mandarin. Can you please help out with that?" And we started going a little bit over it. I'm still learning, still very bad at it, but you know, it's a slow process. And at some point, Shuhui started using these mythology stories, especially the one about Pangu. Um, and I was completely enthralled by it. I was very, very motivated to just keep asking questions, keep finding out the reasons behind the language, behind the story, behind the culture. And then we started talking about it, and we pitched a podcast. Like, hey, it would be kind of cool to just send this to people and just have people be able to listen to it and have these stories that are in written form reach a larger audience, at least a little bit more, a little bit easier. Um, and yeah, now we're here, about a year or more later, after planning and going through it.
Just add a little bit personal touch on it, because uh, I am Chinese and I married a American person, and I feel like there's part of me that he'll never understand. So part of me think if I can like show him or all of the world the side of me, it could bridge some sort of gap that was never like discovered. So yeah.
I'm along for the ride. Although it's worth stating that we were friends before this all started, and then we just kind of coalesced together after graduation, and I was quite pleased because after these two wonderful conspirators got together and laid the foundation for this, I was thrilled to get a call asking if I could assist in any way. Because of course they're don't tell them I said this, but they're lovely people, and I'm very happy to be working with them. But it was just a fun conceit for the project, and one you'd have to be just terminally incurious to not be interested in this stuff, in in mythology and history and the way that ideas and storytelling evolves. It's just neat. It's just really neat, and
Yeah.
I'm so glad we're doing this.
Yeah.
Next question. Okay, why a podcast? Why not another medium? I mean, I can say off the bat, I'm sure that the animated television show is probably a little more expensive than we can afford. But aside from that, why
But if
why
anybody wants
podcast? Do
to
we think?
sponsor, we're always up for it.
Dude, having this animated would be amazing. It would be so pretty. Uh,
That'd be swell.
I can answer the question. Honestly, the three of us are audio professionals. That's what we graduated from. We know how to deal with audio. We know how to deal with like recordings and like processing, sound design, and music. And our friend and composer Solwyn as well. So it was kind of like the easiest thing to gravitate towards. Um, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was like, hey, it'd be kind of sick to do this on my own as well, and to have one that we could call our own. So I feel like that's a very heavy influencer as well. But hey, if we had the budget and the people and all that, animation would be kind of sick. It would be amazing.
Oh, who knows who might be listening right now?
Don't make it creepy.
Stop.
No, I didn't mean for it to be creepy. I meant for... I'm moving on. I'm moving on to the next question. So leave me alone. Okay. This one's a more personal question. Okay. And this is remember how earlier I foreshadowed very skillfully how we were going to be talking about weirdness a little bit more. Well, the moment has come. Planting payoff. Here's the question. These stories have elements that strike modern listeners as weird. Did the weirdness, the paradoxes, the wild plots, the mind-bending magic/spirituality make it harder for us to get into these stories? Thoughts?
Personally, I don't think so. Like it kind of get it
No.
easier. Like if I say the word incest, would you be interested? Of course. If I say the word like
Okay.
somebody and
Okay.
somebody
Depends
got
on the
married,
context.
that's less interested at all. So people are like very normally drawn to weirdness, honestly, like myself
Yeah.
included. So I feel like this is a advantage of drawing people's attention and like welcoming them into a world that they've never heard of. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. Or yeah.
No. And I feel like the weird parts are what inspire questions, or like keep the
Mm.
curiosity going. Like, okay, what? Why was there an axe inside an egg? Why was there an egg at all? Et cetera, right? So like it's all those little details that just makes it interesting. Because otherwise, it gets a little bit cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, you
True.
some things you think that's weird might be because of like cultural difference. So that would be a great
Yeah.
moment for you to learn. Oh, that's why they're thinking different from us. So yeah.
Right, and that's the very reason we've been doing these discussion episodes, is because it's not just because it's actually fun to talk about this, but also because we want to give folks cultural context they might need. Um, like, and this is not something that's exclusive to ancient Chinese mythology. Like those I don't know exactly who publishes these, but these folks who publish Shakespeare plays with the original play on one side and then translation on the other side. It's sort of like thrown into a modern stylization of English to make it a little bit more accessible. I I've taken a little bit of issue with that in the past because it's early modern English. It requires footnotes, but it doesn't require translation. And in the same way here, it's often necessary to supply a footnote or two to for folks unfamiliar with the culture to really get their hooks into it. But it's not inaccessible because it's weird. I totally agree with you guys.
Yeah, but I would also add to that, just like I feel like there's a lot of different people, right? And some people will be very satisfied with the footnotes, and some people they would be happy to get the essence of the story with a translation. Which is partly, at least how I see it, it's partly of what the story episodes. Ooh, look at the face! It's
Well, only because we were just talking about Shakespeare. But go on with what we're doing now. It's a
But
different question.
honestly,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the first time I
Mhm.
like kind of read Shakespeare was because of the translation. I didn't understand English at the time. It's kind of necessary for people who don't speak the language or know the culture at all. But of course, I later on read the thing, and that's a different, whole different experience. I'm hoping this as like a medium to people that are like totally new to this, and then they got interested a little bit more. Okay, I might do a little bit of research on myself and then get into that. So
Yeah.
Right.
The
The function of this as sort of a gateway is very strong.
Yeah, because how I see it, at least, the story episodes that we created with the music, establishing emotional tone, with the sound design, helping with the world, and with you guys' work in the literature of it. That's a translation. We are translating the essence of the story. And if people are interested, and if they so wish, they can go deeper.
I want you both to know I would press this more because I feel like it's true. What you're saying is absolutely true of us doing a literal translation from another language. It's all inherent in the process of what we're doing. We're not here to talk Shakespeare. I need to back off. All right. All right.
I can
Anyway. But
understand what
yes.
you're saying because
Go on.
there are stuff that the translation can't send the message across, and you kind of have to know
Mhm.
the background to understand it.
Yeah.
But this is
But
not Shakespeare level, just
yeah.
saying.
Yes, it's no, sure, but of course. But I should also hasten to add, I've had the exact same experience when I was a kid of being drawn into stories by a sort of like children's versions. Like I remember a kid's abridged version of Frankenstein being my first exposure to that novel, and then I got familiar with it, and then I eventually went on and read the actual thing. So of course there's a place for that sort of thing in sort of updated within the context of one language. I should leave it there. That's where we'll
All
leave it.
right.
All right, moving on. Thank you both. Okay, so speaking of which, moving on to, now that sparks have flown, we can move on to this next question, which is, how did the actual production slash collab process go? Well, obviously we were tearing each other's eyeballs out from the start. That's how it went.
No.
Sure, if you put it
Uh,
that way. Yeah.
No, I joke. I joke.
no,
I
we
joke.
can talk a little
Uh,
bit about the process at least. We had this like we had a pre-production process, right? We decided what stories we would cover, how we would structure them, etc., etc. And then Shuhui, I believe you can speak more to this, but you worked on like actually like translating or modernizing, I guess, the ancient myths. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I'm kind of ambitious because up to this day, still we don't have like a very clear timeline on what happens and what follows that, or like a or just like a clear storyline like the Bible. Um but because a lot of the feedbacks we got from our audiences or fans are like, we do enjoy the continuity of the story. Maybe for the upcoming season, we could keep continuing the story, and that kind of makes it easier to follow instead of like scattered story. It's interesting to learn, but it's harder for us to like form system. So, what I'm doing in picking those stories are trying to find, even though I might be wrong, because like a lot of academic professors don't necessarily agree with like the episode 4 um was actually happening before the episode 5, but I put it in there because like this is not supposed to be like an academic report, and I took the liberty and actually take advantage of us being a podcast, not like an educational channel. So this could be easier for people to understand. And I hope to keep doing this for the upcoming seasons as well. And then as for the
Yep.
translation, I did get down to the source of all of the stories and try to read the original text about them, even though there are still adaptations to like oral traditions and like even previous record of books. So I try to date as back as early as I can and try to connect them and try to like make a line out of it. Um, yes, I did translate from, I mean, more than nice the word from the original text, but there are like considerations from like academic books, the articles, journals. They help as well. I've also like intentionally simplified a little bit of the wording just so the English version will be more coherent, and if anybody wants to learn Chinese, it's not too much like of a gap. So yeah, that's that. And then we move on to Andrew, who actually do the English version of adaptation of those, which was amazing. Love it.
Andrew,
Oh,
could you speak a
well,
little bit about that?
I'll just say that my own role is. Oh, sorry. Well, sure. I mean, my own role in this has been like minimal translation wise because I'm not translating anything. What ends up happening once Shuhui has done the actual work of getting this into English is seeing that because of grammatical differences and time differences between then and there and here and now, sometimes it just requires just an extra set of ears and eyes just to pass through and make sure it's accessible for modern English speakers, and the emotional beats are hit in a way that is faithful enough to the original source, but hopefully still is able to deliver an English kick. Um,
Yeah,
so that we went back and forth a little bit trying to bridge that gap.
yeah, because in that sense, and I do want to mention it, um, we're trying to not translate only like the words. We're trying to translate the essence of it. And like if we are translating that into English, then I feel like there is this aspect that Andrew did very well of using mythologized language, the language that we as an English audience would expect from a myth. And I feel like the collaboration between Shu and Andrew in that sense was very important. So after we have our
So
episodes
high five to
translated,
Shuhui.
after we have our episodes translated, then we actually need to record them. So Shu and Andrew do their lovely narrations. Then we bring those into our software, and then we start adding and editing them a little bit, making sure the spacing is correct, adding sound effects. We send that to our composer Solwyn, who does always an amazing job in composing the music. And then we bring that back. We make it very nice and pretty, and it's set. We also make the videos for YouTube, and that's pretty much it. I say simplifying the whole process. But
Don't simplify
it is
it.
a process.
It,
It is a process that we're able to
when you put
do.
it like that, we can do it over the weekend.
No, it takes time. It takes time, but it is a process that we're thankfully able to do thanks to the history that we have with audio production and the how comfortable we feel creating all of this. Like Shuhui and I are the ones that created the sound design for this. And then we have other pairs of ears like Andrew and Solwyn just like give it a go and make sure that everything's all right. And yeah, and that's the process. So surprisingly
That's
smooth.
the
Surprisingly smooth.
yeah. Oh, it's also nice to be able to do this with folks that we mentioned that we were friends before this, but also because we were in school together, we were collaborators before, and we had to work on projects and things, so we know what it is to work together, which I'm sure helped to grease the wheels for this.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that was great. Next question. so, just we're reaching the end now with great speed. Quickly, any favorite episodes that we've done, either from a production standpoint or just as a listener?
I really like Nua's episode. I may be biased because well, it's the episode that she creates humans and all that. But like the music's lovely. The feeling of it is very well childlike, but in a sense of wonder. That I feel like very much speaks to the season as a whole. And the world still fresh then. So yeah, that's my favorite episode.
I think I personally love the last episode the most. Like it's establishing like the setting of this new world, and we're expecting more. And not to mention the music for this one is great. I don't know if like anybody actually noticed, but our composer Sylvan actually integrated a lot of themes from previous episodes, which is just beautiful. And working on it was like really exciting. Even though I know the story, I narrated it. I was editing on the like last portion of the music and the narration. It got me cry a little bit, honestly. Like it's just oh my god,
Yeah.
this world just opened up, and it's oh
Oh, I love that. It's nice to know that this actually makes us feel things. um,
How about you, Andrew?
Oh, me? I try not to feel things unless I absolutely have to. But no, of course. Let me see. I mean, but those are two great examples of reasons to love those episodes. I think for me, it might be the second to last. The I think of it as the
mm,
battle episode. If only because it feels like such a tonal shift from what we've been through up until then. The story kind of takes on a bit of jet fuel, and suddenly we're dealing with logistics of armies and generals, and it's a little bit like when you're reading The Hobbit and it's all these episodic fun adventures, and then when you get to Lonely Mountain, you get to Battle of the Five Armies. Suddenly it becomes a world of like tacticians and armies moving, and like really non-zero depth for like a children's story. Not that's not applicable to this, but just to say that it's a change that always struck me as just very exciting from a dramatic standpoint. And again, for sound and music was just so just really exciting to
that was a
implement that
fun
in this
episode to
audio
work
form.
on the sound effects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It shows that it was fun for you in that regard. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
fun times. Okay,
I
in
kind of
that
wish
case,
Solven's here to answer this question.
we need to get Solwyn. Where the hell is Solwyn? I mean, my God. Next time maybe. We'll see. Write in you kind viewers and demand Solwyn's presence. We love you, Solwyn. But with all that said, are we ready for our final question?
Go
Yes.
ahead.
Oh, great. I needed to. Sorry, I needed to pause to get an answer to that rhetorical question. Okay, final question for the episode. Season 2 plans? Question
Yes.
mark.
Short answer, yes.
Yay!
Long answer. Oh my
Short
god,
answer,
that's a lot
yes.
of work.
Yeah.
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 Um.
We'll be keeping
Yeah.
everyone updated through our social media about like more concrete plans as to dates. But at least we are already in the pre-production stage, and we're very excited to see where this goes. No spoilers yet.
Oh
If
yes, yes.
you've
Things.
had like
Yeah.
any chance to learn more about like Chinese stories, what would you be willing to learn? And like you accidentally heard this word from this a game, like do you want to know the history of this character or that character? Just let us know.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, do. Yes, please do. Oh yes, things are in the pot. The pot is simmering. Just
Yeah.
little bits of grease are floating to the top. It's smelling great. With all of that said, I think we can. We've had such a fruitful discussion, you guys. This has been great. I feel like we've well and truly gotten the last dangling threads tied up of our first season.
Yeah.
Happy days, everyone.
Happy days.
Well, thank you all. Yes, yes. Thank you all for listening to this final discussion episode, this wrap up episode for season 1 of Beyond the Great Wall. We are so happy that you took this journey with us, and we look forward to seeing you sometime in the future. Stay tuned. Take care, everyone.
Woo.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
Translation by Shuhui Yang. English adaptation by Andrew Goehring. Music by Solwyn Locke. Sound effects by Shuhui Yao and Josué Vera. Art by Ursula Yang. Produced by Shuhui Yao and Josué Vera.